Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Luz Belenguer Cortés. I'm a part-time lecturer at Universitat Jaume I, Castellón, Spain. And today I would like to share my presentation with you, whose title is the following: The Impact of Children's Literature on Interactive Video Games, Narratives, Localization, and Interface Considerations. So, without further ado, let's get started. To introduce my presentation, I will cover the video game Cuphead and its expansion as a cultural phenomenon. I will talk about children's literature as well as its main characteristics. I will analyze the link between children's literature and the video game. And finally, we will reflect on what the impact is of children's literature on translation, in terms of video games, of course, I meant. To start up, I would like to cover some key concepts. When it comes to children's literature, we refer to stories where the protagonists of narratives are often children, animals, or childlike adults, in order to allow them to identify with them in some way. Today, I would like to make a link between children's literature and video games, since we will consider them as narrative entertainment. Now, when it comes to children's literature, that is lit in Spanish, we might think of stories that are related to adventure, courage, and fantasy, that present simple language, rhymes and puns, and that interacts between picture and text. Normally, the stories hide or present morals, values, and some pedagogy, and there is a dual audience between the child and the adults, since sometimes children are not able to read yet, and the adult is the one who tells the story. So it becomes the mediator between the source text and the receiver, the audience, that is children. And then story presents normally archetypical characters in fairy tales, such as the hero, the villains, etc. Now, when it comes to Cuphead, we will find a heroic quest with lessons on perseverance and cooperation. It's a video game whose style is inspired in the 1930s cartoons, and then again presents rhymes and accessible humor, and enemies are very cartoonish, and it hides lessons, as we will see eventually. Now, we can already see different competencies in terms of Cuphead and other sources in terms of comics, as we can see here. Again, it even has a Netflix show, and again, even if the video game is not aimed for children, it's still very frustrating again for adults to play it. Yet again, we can find different characteristics that we found here, as we will later on develop. When it comes to characters, we can see the main character, the hero, Cuphead, then Magman, who's the friend, Mr. Callis, and Elder Kettle, who will be the guidance of the story. In terms of enemies, we can see different enemies that will evolve as long as the player beats or wins. And in order to make it more complicated, enemies will turn into different characters that will have different abilities and different attacks. As I was saying, Cuphead is a shot and gun game. Here we can see how the player has to jump through different platforms and beat different enemies to beat, again, a final boss who will present different attacks and different evolutions as long as the player makes progress on the game. Again, when it comes to children's literature and the role the translator has on translating the text, we can find different approximations in which, in general, authors recommend the translator has to adapt the text so it's appropriate for the target audience and the cultural context. We can even find ideological manipulation. There are a lot of features, or several features of orality. And again, there's an important relationship between text and picture. Finally, O'Sullivan will consider readability as an important factor in terms of adaptation to children. And again, it needs a balance in adaptation. Now, when it comes to Cuphead, again, we can find different adaptations that correlate with these authors, such as in language, we can find signs of orality, as we were mentioning, ya veremos, we will see. Again, there is a very archetypical presentation of the information, such as a story tale, once upon a time, the relationship between the text and the picture, very simple language, very simple syntax we can see here. Again, illustrations that are inspired by the 1930s, as we can see here with final boss of the game and Pete. Again, we can find puns such as in the sources and the translated text. In English, I'm very smashing, even in grave situations. Smashing because this boss eventually smashes the player to kill them. And in grave situations, we play with the adjective grave situation, and then serious situation, and then the grave we can see in the picture. Again, the relationship between the picture and text. In Spanish, it was similarly translated into that with a rhyme, oraciones u opciones, and then dilapidar with the word lapida, and dilapidar to cover and translate smashing. Again, we find a lot of several idiomatic phrases such as jumping jelly beans, which was translated into pardiez in Spanish. Again, everything's gone topsy-turvy was translated into está todo patas arriba. Again, if the wonder child is what it takes to bring Alice back to life, then by golly we'll find those ingredients. Anda la osa in Spanish, fantastitarta, again, a lot of adaptations. It's even noted in names, Chef Salt Baker, El Chef Saleroso in Spanish, and then a lot of informal language like, oi, you're them cups that took out the devil angel, which was translated into, yep, sois las tazas que le dieron al diablo pa'l pelo, ¿verdad? And again, finally, with locations, the King's Leap was translated to Enroque del Rey. So to draw up some conclusions, we could see that a descriptive study could really help quantify the cases of conversion between children's literature and video games. We can consider and reflect if these decisions are focused on the duality of the youth audience, or it's only targeted to a video game player, and if we could add another more question, we could even reflect on translations responding to linguistic needs, or more such as discursive creations. This is the end of my presentation. I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and please feel free to ask no matter what question you might have. Again, thank you so much.